This episode is going to be a little different. So many people are carving out an ideal guest avatar that isn't actually influencing any purchase decisions, any booking decisions. Think of it like an iceberg. Okay, above the surface is where most people are playing when it comes to marketing their listing. That's all a bunch of data points, and they're data points that a guest is going to scroll past because you're making your property look like a commodity. Welcome to another episode of the STR Sisterhood. I'm your host, Stacey St. John, and I am so stinking excited to spend some time with you today. Now, before we jump into this episode, you know what, girl? I'm going to share a quote with you that I recently read. And it says, "You can be 1,000 different women. It's your choice which one you want to be. It's about freedom and sovereignty. You celebrate who you are. You say, 'This is my kingdom.'" Those words come to us from actress Selma Hayek. Now, my friends, this episode is going to be a little different. Normally, I am here interviewing someone, and today I decided to come to you by my lonesome, and we are going to be talking all about ideal guest avatar. And you might be going, oh my goodness, well, that's such a boring topic because everybody talks about ideal guest avatar. And you're right. A lot of people are talking about ideal guest avatar, but here is the problem. So many people are carving out an ideal guest avatar that isn't actually influencing any purchase decisions, any booking decisions. And my goal is by the time we're done with this podcast episode, I have opened your eyes into a new and enhanced way to think about your ideal guest avatar. Now, let me say something that could probably be a little uncomfortable. If your ideal guest avatar is a list of demographics, how old they are, how much money they make, or even their name, you actually do not have an avatar. Age, income, location is not what makes people book. Their emotions are what makes people book. And your guest isn't choosing between different properties, actually. They're choosing between stress and relief. The problem is most hosts are marketing their properties to the surface while decisions are happening below the surface. And let me ask you this. If demographics are actually what converted, the best listing would always win, right? And we all know that that's not actually how this works. Most people providing advice on ideal guest avatar are talking about who they are and not what they're carrying. And I don't mean carrying a piece of luggage or a backpack. I mean the emotional things that they are carrying when they book a property. Guests show up at a property when they book through Airbnb, Vrbo, or even a direct booking website. They arrive with stress. They arrive with silent fears. And they arrive with past disappointments of previous vacations gone wrong. In short-term rentals, the decision maker, the one actually making the booking, they're feeling responsible for everyone being happy on vacation. And that's why your listing that says 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, that's why it gets ignored. They scroll past because it feels emotionally unsafe. And I want to talk about that with you at a deeper level. So here's the scoop. Real ideal guest avatars live below the surface. What do I mean about above the surface and below the surface? Think of it like an iceberg. Okay, above the surface, above the water, is where most people are playing when it comes to marketing their listing. They're talking about things like, I have a king bed, or I have super fast Wi-Fi, or you've got access to the pool or free parking. That's all a bunch of data points. And they're data points that a guest is going to scroll past because you're making your property look like a commodity. Okay? The deep dive below the surface are the hidden drivers, okay? And what top hosts are doing these days is they're selling the identity, not just the property. Your ideal guest avatars, they have a fear of disappointing their family when they're booking a property. And that fear of disappointing their family is something they're not actually sharing with anyone. And so you have to make sure that you understand what that fear looks like and feels like to them so that you can help your listing appear like an emotional insurance policy. All right, so let's talk about a framework that I want you to think through when it comes to your ideal guest avatars. And I'm calling this the Iceberg Method. We just talked about the iceberg above and below the surface. Let's talk about what the Iceberg Method is. Layer 1 is, what are your ideal guest avatars actually doing? Well, on that first above the surface layer, they're scrolling Airbnb. They're scrolling Vrbo. They're looking at different photos of listings. They're reading different listing copy. And quite honestly, they're reading reviews. They're comparing properties. Okay, so that is their actions. Layer 2 are their thoughts. What are they asking themselves when it comes to whether or not a listing is right for them? They're asking things like, well, how fast is the Wi-Fi? And is this really in the right location? Or do I want to be closer to X, Y, and Z? They're thinking, is this host really going to be responsive to me? Is this host really going to answer my questions in a timely manner? Those are all the questions they're asking themselves. And again, may not even be articulating them to anyone else. But layer 3 are below the surface, and those are their emotions. What are they feeling? What are they anxious about? What are they afraid of? And what are they hopeful for? So that iceberg method is so important. You need to look at their actions, their thoughts, and their emotions. Think of the word ATE. A.T.E. And that's how you can remember the iceberg method, their actions, their thoughts, and their emotions. Most people write their listings for layer 1. Top performing listings write for layer 3. Let me say that again. Layer 1 are the actions. They're reading different listings. They're looking at photos. They're comparing different properties and reading reviews. Most people are writing their listings for layer 1. Now let's review what layer 3 is, their emotions. What's this host anxious about? What are they skeptical of? What are they hoping for relief from when they book this property? When you understand those psychographics of your ideal guest avatar, that's where you start to create a booking engine with your listing. And the top performing listings are writing for that layer 3. Now, your ideal guest is driven by their identity, not their logistics. Their beliefs are such that they don't want surprises. They're thinking to themselves, I just want this to be easy when I go and stay at this property. And I certainly don't want to feel stupid or guilty for booking the wrong one. They often have fears. And let me tell you, again, they're not sharing these fears with anyone else. But quietly and secretly, they're afraid of, number 1, letting their family down by booking the wrong place. They're afraid of wasting their hard-earned money by overspending. And they're certainly afraid of creating stress instead of rest. Think about this. I have 2 kids that are grown men, but when they were little and we would take a trip to the beach, the last thing I would want is to check into a property only to find out that the beds are uncomfortable, that the PlayStation that's included in the listing doesn't work, and my kids are going to be saying, Mom, this place is so lame. Nobody wants that. Your ideal guest doesn't want that. What do they want? Well, they want predictability. And in fact, when I was at Airbnb's corporate offices back in October of last year, they were saying that reliability and predictability is the number 1 booking factor. Not price, my friends, not price. Your ideal guest avatar is also looking for a smooth experience, meaning no hiccups when it comes to booking your property. They also want smoothness when it comes to check-in. They want smoothness when it comes to every amenity is working properly. And they certainly want smoothness when it comes to communication. Inside, though, they want to feel proud for making the right decision. Again, they're not sharing that information with anyone. They're not saying that to their spouses, their children, their friends, their family members who they're traveling with. But inside, deep down, they want to walk away from that getaway feeling prideful inside, thinking, you know what? I made a really good choice. They want to feel like, you know what? I'm a good planner. I take care of my people and I make smart choices. Let's think about this. Your ideal guest is not trying to impress anyone. In fact, they're trying to avoid regret. And that's so important when you think about not only how you're writing your listing description, but your entire guest experience. So, what we want to think about when it comes to our ideal guest avatar, we want to create emotional clarity, not just clarity on how many beds and bathrooms you have, how many people your property sleeps. We want to create clarity that attracts them to your property at an emotional level. You are not selling excitement. You are not selling an amazing stay. What you are selling is confidence. I want you to look at the language in your listing description, and I want you to think about, is that language salesy language? Do I try to make my listing sound amazing? And let me tell you, I'm the first person that uses the word amazing. I love the word amazing. It's amazing, right? But when we are writing copy for our listings, we don't want to sound hypey. We don't want to sound salesy. We want to sound calm. We want to sound confident. We want to sound predictable. Let me tell you, my friends, predictability beats promises. So your listing must be written so that it feels predictable. Now, your reviews also need to back up your listing description. So again, if your listing is described in one way, but your reviews are showing something different, that is also going to create misalignment and is going to actually repel your ideal guest. If your listing copy feels calm, feels clear, feels grounded, you're already attracting the right people to your listing. All right. Now you might be like, well, wait a minute, Stacey. How do I know if my copy feels calm, clear, and grounded? My friends, there are so many tools that can help you, and we'll dive into those in a little bit. Now, I want you to think about shallow versus deep avatar thinking. Shallow avatar thinking is, my ideal guest is an upper middle class family. They're between the ages of 35 and 50, and they're driving from a nearby city within 2 hours. Okay, I'm just giving that as an example. So that's like a shallow avatar. I want you to go deep when it comes to looking at your ideal guest avatar. You still want to understand what their demographics are, but you also want to understand their psychographics. So a deep avatar is the person booking feels responsible for everyone else. They're risk aware, not price shopping. They want reassurance more than they want novelty. And they're quietly asking themselves, will this be easy? Do you see how speaking to that ideal guest avatar would be completely different? The same guest, completely different message, and a completely different conversion rate, my friends. Does that make sense? All right. I want you to ask yourself these 5 questions. Number 1, what is my guest afraid will go wrong when they're booking my property? Number 2, what past disappointments are they trying to avoid? Number 3, what does relief look like for my ideal guests? Number 4, what words do they use when they're reassured? And number 5, what kind of person do they want to feel like after they book and also after they stay? I want you to know your best copy, your best listing copy is already hiding in your guests' fears, not your amenities. I'm going to say that one more time. Your best listing copy is already hiding in your guests' fears, not your amenities. So I want you to reframe the way that you are thinking about your ideal guest avatar. And I want you to reframe that so you have an ongoing strategic advantage. So my friends, your ideal guest avatar is not some list of characteristics on a piece of paper. It's not how much money they made last year, and it's certainly not someone's first name. Your ideal guest avatar has feelings, anxieties, emotions. And once you understand your guest clearly, everything changes. Your listing copy changes. The captions on your photos change. The way you speak to your guests changes. Even the confidence in your pricing changes. I want you to stop marketing to who your guest is and start speaking to what your ideal guest wants to feel. My friends, I hope this episode has been helpful. I know I'm usually here interviewing someone, but I've heard so many people talk about ideal guest avatar at such a surface level recently. I couldn't help myself but to come on here and share a strategic way of thinking about your ideal guest avatar. I would love to hear your thoughts. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know if this makes sense. Let me know what questions you have, and let me know other topics that you'd like training on as well. You can visit me online at stacystjohn.com, and I'll see you soon.